Okay, so welcome everyone to Teams Nation. Glad to be here. My session is about the deep dive integration with Teams and Yammer, pretty much a demo-based session. I've got a few slides, a few introductory and some informative slides as well. And so, just want to say a big thanks to the organizers, Chris Hoda, the other Chris as well, Vesa, Adam and others. So, really great job, hitting 5,000 registrations like today, and that's just great news. So gives me a pleasure to be here for the fifth time presenting at Teams Nation since its birth. So, and thanks to Sarah and also other moderators who are also looking after all the other sessions. So big thanks to everyone, and I hope for those of you who's joined this session, really appreciate, because I saw that slide just now, with all the other 12 sessions, and boy, that was really tough to choose. So, and I'm glad you've made the right choice here. So, Microsoft Teams and Yammer integration, it is. So, a bit about me, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Chirag Patel. I live and work in London, UK. Work with Patel Consulting, delivering Microsoft 365, Teams, Yammer, SharePoint, Power Platform, all services around deployments, as well as migrations, predominantly in SharePoint world. So been around for 15, 20 odd years as a SQL DBA. And then obviously the last 10 years or so, kind of hitting the BPOS and Office 365 through Microsoft 365. So generally, I kind of, independent consultant, so work with various Microsoft partners, mainly in the UK, as well as the end user organizations. And the recent project I've worked with was divestment of Microsoft 365 when the company got split. So that was a huge challenge, but equally a lot to take into account, including Yammer and Teams and other services as well. I love speaking in various community events, not only just sharing what I know, but also being able to learn from various speakers. But also I'm a Microsoft certified trainer, so I also deliver training around SharePoint fundamentals as well as Microsoft Viva. And so, feel free to connect with me. techchirag.com is the best way to get to me, and for any questions, queries, and then, would love to get connected. So in my spare time, if I do have any, I also organize and run Microsoft 365 UK online meetup on a monthly basis. So we got a next one coming up around 13th of April. So hopefully you can join, and look forward to seeing you then as well. Right. So haven't got real agenda to this because it's all demo based, and really the content of this is mainly around the demos of the integration experiences between both Yammer and Teams, and we'll touch on a few other services such as Power Automate as well as SharePoint. But for those of you, you've probably come across a lot of materials online. For some of your organizations, you probably are already using Yammer. Microsoft Teams is not a choice, it's just mandatory now. If you do go with Microsoft Tech, then Teams is just there, and the rest is history in terms of the last 5 years, and certainly celebrating the 5th anniversary of Microsoft Teams last week. It really kind of boils down that much of the work that you do on a day-to-day basis works within your Microsoft Teams, and really kind of focusing on your projects or your departmental work, or in external teams, whatever that use case may be. But you're really kind of revolving around the chats as well as the meetings, and the calls, the phone systems if you do have within Microsoft Teams, and then you've got your both Microsoft 365 as well as the external applications in which you can integrate, whether that's through your meetings, your chats, and kind of a nice little hub, if you like, you have to get your collaboration going, and having that that teamwork environment in various teams that you're a member of. When you look at Yammer from on the other side, yeah, forever, you can still do the things that you do in Yammer. You can still do a lot of it in Teams. The common argument is that if you're a large multinational or even a large organization, then Yammer is for you. And if you're a small organization, Teams is for you for everything. In my opinion, I don't think that's entirely true, because the materials you see, that's obviously company and research opinions. But for me, what matters is that in Teams, you really don't have a way to get connected with your entire organization, unless, of course, if you got org-wide team chat space. But even then, you're going to be surrounded by full distractions of all sorts. So Yammer comes into play, whereby not only your company-wide collaboration that goes on, but also being able to actively seek answers, as well as being able to connect through a variety of communities, which we'll look at the examples in a second. But in general sense, as much as Yammer has been around, yes, it is an enterprise social networking. May not be a cup of tea for everybody, but I know for sure that when I go from one client to another, and if they've got Yammer kind of deployed, then for me, that's the very best way to understand the culture and the people of that organization. Because without that glue, you really are limited in terms of what you do on a day-to-day basis is within Teams. So you kind of lose out. So Yammer is still there, and it's by all means not dead. And there are a lot of hashtags and things like that in the media out there, where constant innovations are coming into Yammer. For the admin folks, if you are looking after Microsoft 365 and managing teams, in terms of Yammer fits in just like with your Microsoft 365 groups, in which you get a SharePoint site, your mailbox, and its own security in Azure AD. So you got all those good things there, and being able to then share the various services within the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. When you look at furthermore, in stream, if that's where you're sharing your videos or having your events organized, then you can still use both Teams and Yammer for that. But it's worth bearing in mind that if you do create a Microsoft 365 group and is connected to Teams, then that particular group will not have Yammer, and vice versa. If you create a Yammer community or a group, then you can't have Microsoft Teams associated with that. So it's one or the other, and therefore it's very interesting when I do go through the list of your groups in your Microsoft 365 environment. You may see some duplications or even triplications, in which that a Teams may be called, let's say, for an engineering department who may be working on their projects within Microsoft Teams. But then you may also have a Yammer community where the engineers are conversing or asking questions, or whichever it is, in terms of doing all that social elements within Yammer. So you got to kind of just be careful in terms of your naming conventions, so that as an administrator, you don't get confused as to which one is which. At the heart of it, it does 5 things, Yammer, and for a lot of us who are used to with Yammer, it's a great place for having the company-wide conversations. It's what is built on that communities that you build around the kind of expertise you require, and much of it is around discussions and threaded discussions, question and answers. And we'll look at that just briefly in terms of, for those of you who are not familiar with the Yammer interface, but also being able to then kind of rewarding your colleagues or consultants or whoever to be able to praise for their work. And that comes just naturally as a human behavior if you're kind of in an organization who promote each other and the colleagues to get basically the company moving objectively as well as financially, being able to build that knowledge capital that you gain over the experience of others in Yammer. And then obviously you can carry out the short surveys, polls, all within the Yammer itself. The types of communities you can create, that again, I've kind of put that in the 4 categories there, whether that's communities of interest, whether that's your football team or the women in leadership, whatever the communities are. And the more the better, because obviously that way you're more able to isolate some of the works that goes on in some of the various communities. But typically, you'll have your departmental based communities anyways, but at the same time, cutting across the silos and going across various functional communities. So that's whether that's project managers or even kind of project managers itself around the financials or whichever the experience you wish to share. So no end to that in terms of what groups or communities you create. And that's where kind of you get all your content mediums going on. And just before we go into demos now, so this is the kind of, if you like, probably a key slide, if you like, to kind of get to really understand in terms of where Yammer touches in various Microsoft 365 areas. And, predominantly Teams, because that's where you spend much of your day. So you want to kind of, do a lot of it with the Yammer experiences inside Teams instead of having to step out and go to another app like in Yammer to do all the things. So, Teams is very much embedded, and we're going to take a look at those integrations. But at the same time, SharePoint is there as well, because you can now edit your page in Teams, and through that editorial interface, you can then be able to drag and drop your Yammer community content. And then we'll cover briefly the Microsoft Viva side of things and things that's coming in the near future as well. So how much that embeds, and Viva really is all about the employee experience. And there was a previous session to mine as well, from Leslie and others. So you probably know a lot already about the Microsoft Viva. And last but not least is being able to create events to be able to broadcast to the wider audiences. So let's jump to the demos and have a quick look at Yammer. So, this is kind of a fictitious company, which you probably will see a lot or have seen before, Contoso Electronics. My personal view of Yammer here in terms of home feed, I've kind of caught up with all the feeds that I get. But on the left-hand side, I've got various communities here, and leadership is probably the one that we're gonna play a lot with this demo. But typically, you got your conversation, what's the leadership about, the files and events. But also I can, kind of favorite if there is a lot of communities and pick and choose my favorites in that manner. And by simply going there as an administrator, I can also mark this community as an official community, so that when it comes to search, promoting the conversations that goes on inside that community, I can lift that and be able to promote as an administrator. And then you get that little badge, tick badge, to say that this is the official, trusted, and I'm sure all the information is trusted because it is a corporate data, but it just gives that extra kind of stamp of authority in terms of what goes in that community. Usual stuff, I can share my thoughts, ideas, to say Teams Nation. I can just go ahead and post that as a message in that sort of manner. If I did wanted to kind of go and share that, I can do all those things, share that to other community, private messages, and so forth. I can even go and turn that, if I change my mind, I can say, maybe change that to a question. So I can just go ahead and make that question into that format, and then be able to follow the Q&As regarding that particular topic as well. Or I can just go back to and change that discussion and so forth. I can follow that particular conversation so that I can get very tailor-made subscribed feed. But also the one that I kind of like here is, as well as having everything that's open conversations, I'm able to close them. I'm actually going to make it as a feature conversation, which is kind of quite relatively new, in that I can actually make that promoting to say, this particular conversation here should only last until 6th of April 2022, and therefore that becomes a stamped featured conversation stamp as well. So you can add a lot of life to each of these conversation and discussions, and be able to then promote and demote as you please. What I can also do is something here called add topics. And now this has been around for some time anyways. So topics, because before you were able to put things like a hashtag and all those things, or I can just go and create my own topic in that manner. So again, you might wonder, what's the big deal about that? Now, this is kind of huge because it's the foundation piece, if you like, for what's going to come around the corner, which is imminent anyways. It's the Microsoft Viva topics in terms of being able to surface the Yammer topics into your Microsoft Viva topics experience. So, whatever you've got in your Yammer as an investment for a number of years, any topics you've got, as soon as that goes live and subject to your licensing with Microsoft 365, because Viva Topics is a premium license, so your tenant may vary in terms of what topics you may surface into your Viva Topics, which we'll look at that a bit later on as well. And that's pretty much, I wanted to touch very kind of briefly around the conversation side of things, and that way you kind of go into your various communities and be able to kind of bring life to your conversations. On the right hand side, I've got a few things: community resources. So this is unique to every community. So because it's a group based Microsoft 365 group, so you get your SharePoint document library, SharePoint site planner, and all those things. If I click on files, then you get the good old familiar experience with SharePoint. So you got the whole that interface in there, being able to go to each file and still use the usual right-click option menu that you get for every file in that. So that's all familiar territory if you work with SharePoint, and still be able to change your views and so forth. If I switch over to Teams now, the same experience that I've just gone through, you will get that in Microsoft Teams as well. So a number of ways you can get that in here. So firstly, there's about three lots of integration experiences. So I can go to my apps railbar that I have here, and if your organization have enabled it by policy, then you will be able to deploy it, or they may force it for everybody. Recommendation is that you kind of force it on everyone, so that Yammer Communities app is always there on the left hand side. And so as soon as I've done that, you get the familiar experience of Yammer Communities left hand side, and still be able to get to your leadership community space as well. What you can't see in Teams experience, and this is probably one of the options here, is that when I click on events, then you've got nothing here. You can't even create a live event, and the live event that you have as part of your Teams, you can create that if you're within your own Microsoft Teams chat space, and create a dedicated live event for kind of having a bit like the keynote that we had this morning here. So for that, you have to step back into Yammer for that. So if I go and do that very quickly, and this is probably another integration experience in regards to your Yammer and Teams, which links with your live events. So if I go back to leadership, then within events, and then I've got my create live event. So I'll go ahead, and if my Teams admin have enabled that policy for me able to create that, then I can go ahead and do that. So here I can just say Teams Nation, let's say closing keynote. Presenter, we'll say Patty, who's one of the employees, and then I can say myself will be the producer for that live event. I'll go with those dates and go with that time frame as well, so that's fine. And again, if I want to say, this is a test event, then I can just display that. And then if I want to enable Q&A, which I would probably say yes, then go ahead and then click next. So now you get your two options here. If it's kind of a very sophisticated, very corporate, high-profile event, you probably have the infrastructure in place in which you can have your camera positions, the encoder, and all the other devices that may require for you to operate. In my case, I'm going to keep it very simple, and I'll just go with Microsoft Teams as an option. Go ahead and then create my live event, which will then be scheduled. And then if I'm a Yammer user, I can come into here and I can see here that every time I come into my leadership until that event's happening, then I've got that calendar marked in here as well. if I go to my Outlook, and we'll just go and fire up that live event, and just to kind of complete on that part. So if I go to Outlook and go into my calendar and just include that. So there's my email. That's fine. That's delivered, not delivered. It's probably being spammed, so that's all right. And where is it gone? Where is it gone? Calendar. Fine. Okay, so I get my usual invite just like you would in your Microsoft Teams environment, and I would join this as a presenter or producer. So as soon as I do that, obviously I don't want to disconnect myself, so I'm just going to cancel that, and I'm just going to go and watch on the web instead. Now, it is important that for live event you do need your Microsoft Teams client in there, but as soon as I've kind of done that, once this is being kind of going in there, I get my usual things in there in terms of being able to access the closing keynote. Obviously, I'm not going to go live with this in any ways, but you can see that here I got my show Yammer conversations as well. So the good thing about this is that even though it's a Teams live event option that I chose, I can still bring my Yammer conversations regarding this event and post the information there as well. So something like can't wait or something. So that way I can then post that conversation to the leadership, but I also have the other options in there as well. So, that's kind of a very quick way to kind of go in there. And once I'm kind of ready to go live with this event, I can just go with my set of options and then go ahead and then fire up my Teams Nation closing keynote. So that's kind of useful from the live event perspective. So I'll close that, close the Outlook, and then go to Teams. Yes, I'm back. I must say, I've never seen that before. That's quite new. And that's probably in this web version here. So go into here. The other experience that I want to look at, actually, sorry, my mistake. If I go back to Yammer, then that same live event that I had, which in the leadership there. So there's my Yammer conversation thread here. So then the following, in the future, people can come and still catch up on the conversations for that live event that was broadcasted with the Yammer itself. In the events, you got that information there in there as well, to be able to then access if there was a recording for that and so on. Okay, let's head over to Teams now and get a bit more life from Yammer conversations into our pages. So, one of the things you can do is, I've got a set of teams here, and if I go to, say, monthly reports, then I can go ahead and create a new tab and simply add Yammer in there as well. So good thing about this is, depending on which project team you're working with or any particular team chat space, I can choose my type of content that I can bring in that tab, whether that's community or topic. And I created a topic called Contoso. So hopefully that's gone in there. And there it is. I can choose Contoso as a topic and then go ahead, save it. And then every time when there's any feeds relating to that particular topic, then it's going to come into here as that topic. You can see, right, this is still in making, because when I created my topic, I didn't even put a hashtag in there, and here it's showing as hashtag in the tab itself. So, that will obviously hopefully disappear. But again, good thing is I can bring my, in this case, a featured conversation into my team. So easy way to bring your Yammer conversations from any communities as well in there. The other thing I could do is perhaps, have some kind of a feed to be able to bring constant messages if there are new ones. So, with monthly reports, I may have, again, depending on which Yammer community you use, I may decide to post the Yammer feed straight into my the general channel posts here that I get. So connectors, you got all the third-party connectors in there, but there's the one that I've got here, so I can configure my Yammer connector. Again, similar principles. If that's been disabled, then you won't get to that. But as soon as I've got that connector in place, it knows who I am. That's connected with my integrated authentication. I can decide to have all messages coming from a particular group. In this case, I'll say leadership, and where's it gone? Yeah, one will do. I can choose multiple communities, have all messages or new conversations, or I can choose by the Yammer user and the topics or keywords in this case here. Good thing is you can have that as a daily feed because you don't want constant distractions in there. And that's all you kind of go in there and then being able to then save that feed. So every time you don't have to go to Yammer all the time, and then it just works when it does. Okay, so that's the second one in terms of that integration. And then last but not least is the pages. So in here, one of the things you can do, which you probably are using for a lot of the information for your, like say, intranet perhaps, or you may have a project status report that you may decide to use SharePoint pages. So in my case, I'm going to use the home page for this SharePoint site, and I'll just add that as a tab. So then I get nice same page as I normally do in my SharePoint environment. Same interface, same options, toolbars, all is there. But what I can do is all right within Teams, I can then edit that page, and I'll just add the Yammer feeds in here. So if I hover around there, then I can pull up my web part and type in Yammer. And then I get two options of web parts, either conversations or highlights. So in this case, I'll go with conversations, and then go and configure that to either choose community, user topics, and so forth. So when it comes to communities, I'll probably choose the same one, leadership, and that just, that experience just travels everywhere with you. And as soon as I've chosen that, preview appears there. I'm okay with that, conversations there, and then I'll just go ahead and then republish. So once you've kind of done that, then that's your simple page experience and all the editing capabilities all inside Teams without even stepping into Yammer altogether. So you still get the richness of your conversations and every information for that community inside there. And you can make that look pretty in terms of how many conversations you do want to display. So do take a look at that if you haven't already. Just gonna have a quick look to see if there's any questions in the chat.
You're clear so far, but if people do have questions, please do post them or use the raise hands.
Absolutely. Yeah, indeed. Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, so I'll probably swiftly move, and yes, thanks, Leslie. Topics are powerful. Absolutely. Great. Okay, so let's go to the other area now, which is our Q&A app. So let me go back to slides very quickly. So we had a quick look at the conversations and the Yammer in Teams with various integration experiences, as well as the SharePoint pages and so forth. So and of course the official communities that we set the badge earlier on. I'll come to the Power Automate in a second, but what I do want to look at is the Q&A, and this is again, this app is available in your Teams apps environment. Again, you'll be, if some of you don't know, you may be surprised, it works off Yammer. If Yammer was not enabled or you've blocked access to Yammer, then this will not work for you at all. And this is a great way to actually have your usual Teams chat that happens during the meetings. You can actually turn that into a kind of a structured way of having questions and answers set up in that particular meeting, and therefore being able to then kind of lodge those response that you may get, or even discussions of your Q&A in various ways. A couple of pointers to bear in mind here is that it is of course meant for the regular users, as well as your if you have any federated users set up, and also guest users. It doesn't work for anonymous users if you got like anyone set to access those meetings. So an example of that could be like the user group that I run. In that environment, when I invite anyone on the planet to join the user group meeting, they would not be able to post questions, answers on that environment. In terms of your compliance, and in particular the retention policies configured for Yammer, they're going to be different set of policies for your Yammer in the usual environment that you have. You would still need Exchange being able to even delegate yourself as an admin if, for example, if you had a question that may be posted and it might be offensive or whatever you, and you may want to take that question out of that Q&A, then for that you would have to go into your compliance center or sorry, Exchange admin center for that individual who posted it, and make yourself as a delegate admin, and then being able to access that conversation, being able to then pull that out. So long-winded way of going to that, but just bear in mind that if you do or if you are using Q&A in that environment, then these are some of the things that you need to bear in mind. And there's only two types. You can either have it as unmoderated Q&A or moderated questions. Let's take a look at that briefly, how that works and how do you go about doing that. So go back to Teams. So I'll go ahead and just quickly schedule a meeting. And just like a normal meeting that we would do, so we can say Teams Nation review, perhaps. Maybe there's multiple volunteers and others who might want to be part of that. And then we'll just go and add Patty, Megan, and then we can just go ahead and set that meeting up. That's fine. And go ahead and set the meeting up. So that's fine, that's okay. And then one of the things, once you kind of set up in here, then what you can do, obviously, like with your normal meeting, you can go ahead and kind of set your options like you normally do once you've set up your meeting. But in this case, we're just going to go and use the Q&A. So we're going to just add that into our environment. So this Q&A app from Microsoft, of course, and again, if you've disabled through the policies in your Teams environment, then you will not see that. But if it is enabled, then you can just go ahead and add that Q&A app to your environment. I accidentally clicked a whiteboard over there, so apologies for that. But once you kind of put that Q&A app in your meeting itself, then you got options to say either enable to ask new questions or respond to conversations, as well as being able to then set your moderation, whether it's unmoderated or not. So I'll just go ahead and save that. And then hopefully I'll get my Q&A tab like so. And then, excuse me, then, before the meeting starts, then we can just go ahead and say, a lot of volunteers. Tapping is awful. A lot of volunteers. Hard. So what is the full of swags? So I can just go ahead and post that question, and then all the other questions, answers, I can then just similar in the sort of Yammer in a true Yammer fashion. I can like those, comment those things as well, and add my discussion to those things. So that's fine. That's okay if you're not part of the meeting already. But then you can just go ahead and just join that meeting. So in this case, yep, I'll continue without audio and video, and I'll go ahead and join. Now, what happens here is that if you've got your regular Teams client, then in this particular instance, on the web version, you're just not going to see your Q&A app itself. You get your regular features, being able to post message meeting tabs. If Patty and Alex join the meeting, when they come online through the web version of Teams, you're not going to see the Q&A itself, but you're going to see that in your regular client. Now, obviously, I'm connected with my Teams client for this session, so I can't show you that, but I wanted to make that important distinction to be able to understand when that Q&A appears. And when it does appear, then that experience is going to be the same as what you get inside your Q&A experience that you get in here. So just like your regular chat, it just appears as a Q&A option in your Teams client, and then that way your commentary around question answers can be used. Okay.
Do have a couple of questions popping up in the chat for you.
Yeah.
What do you think about the rumor that Teams is going to replace Yammer?
Teams going to replace Yammer? Well, it is a rumor. I don't know nothing. And if you could see my slide earlier on when I put down the difference between Yammer, I put and, because for me it's not or, it's and. As far as I know, the investment is there. The team, obviously, as we know, with the public tech space, tech community space, there's a lot of work going on between Samir and Dan at Microsoft, who are constantly investing in Yammer. So no, I don't believe Yammer is getting replaced.
Popular answer.
Thank you. Absolutely. So yes, they're both very much staying alive. But I think the key is, how much you want to get out of your organization, and that investment is there. It's not wasted. So absolutely, if you haven't started using it, start using it, because it's the only way you're going to keep your organization and your employees who are remotely working or in this hybrid working environment. Then that's how you're going to keep it together through Yammer, if you can't be there in person for any reasons. So good questions. So thanks for that, Sarah. Okay, so if I come out of, okay, yeah, let's close that one. I'm back. Okay, so the other area I wanted to look at was the Power Automate side of things as well. So at the moment, if I have any chats, and if I go to Market Project Team, for example, is that one? No, sorry, my mistake. Let's go back to retail. So if I go into retail here, then I got my usual chats, and then if I wanted to, for any reason, if I wanted to kind of share that message into Yammer, then if I go into here, more actions, then I've got my usual things here. But what I don't see is anywhere of having Yammer option, and that's not there by default, especially if you haven't enabled Yammer in there. So what you can do cleverly there is just create yourself a Power Automate. So if I go to, I'll go back to the Yammer and go to Power Automate, which is where all the goodness of Power Platform experiences happen. So this is my environment for creating workflows. And if I go to specifically in templates, then if I go and search for, say, Yammer and even Microsoft Teams, then I'll get a set of few templates, not that many compared to the others, but it is what it is in terms of, it's all about conversations and messages. So I wouldn't expect a bucket load of templates there. But what I can do here is being able to then say, share that message to Yammer. So it'll give me a simple template as you would expect, so those are my two connections for Teams and Yammer. I can go ahead and continue with that. And then I can choose if I want to post a message in a particular community, then I could probably go and say, I'll pick leadership for now. It will grab my information around the user ID message, and if there's any optional notes for that particular Teams chat message that I may have. So then I can just go ahead and create that workflow. And if I have a quick look in terms of what that looks like, then it's nothing more than a couple of steps in there to be able to then kind of do, select a message, post the message, and then apply to each of those messages with a particular, in this case, is using adaptive card to give that a bit of a good experience of user interface within that. You can add your own steps if you wanted to do something, other clever things, but I'll probably leave it as that. And so if I go back, then I know my flow is ready to go as per that template. So then if I go back to my Teams, go back to Teams, and I could go to any Teams for that matter that I'm a member of, go to General Channel, and hopefully that's available now. So if I go and pick that message from Joanna, and more actions, don't think is there yet. No, it's not there yet. Okay, I'll probably wait a bit, but I'll probably, but when that works, that Yammer option appears in there, and then you will be able to then post that into your leadership Yammer community. So I'll hang around on that one and just kind of move on very quickly in the interest of the time. So had a quick look at the Q&A app and some of the kind of boundaries around in terms of what you can do and can't do. if you look at from the live event perspective earlier that we had a quick look, again, with live events, it's only in Yammer and Teams you can create your usual meetings that you have within your meetings, and the webinars will all reside within your Microsoft Teams environment. And at the moment, the limit is until around the end of June, around 20,000 participants who can take part in live events and various other meetings. It is obviously meant for the larger audiences if you want to kind of really have a strict control on your meeting experiences, but hopefully that information is kind of useful when you do plan whether it's a regular Teams meeting versus the live event, and especially seeing that also from the Yammer itself interface. So once you kind of do your live events in there, then you get your kind of good stats out of that in terms of the number of people viewing that live event, the total conversations that happens, but also being able to drill down into your insights. Furthermore, the engagement for that particular event, both during and after, as well as before the live event starts. So kind of good stats to keep an eye on that, but also getting into that richer insights as well. What are the top conversations, as well as some of the best answers during that kind of live event conversations that was taking place. So a good way to kind of drill into that. And I've posted a couple of links as well as on some of the other slides to be able to kind of drill on that. So this is the one that I kind of is really eagerly awaiting for, that Microsoft Viva. So for those of you who are not using Microsoft Viva, and it's an employee experience capability, and you get at the moment 4 modules: Viva Connections, Topics, Insights, and Viva Learning. So Topics is very powerful because it does rely heavily on content, and predominantly that's within SharePoint. So what that essentially means in terms of that is that you as a user don't really have to get completely committed to organizing your knowledge that exists within your content mediums in your SharePoint sites, but you're able to take advantage of the machine learning and artificial intelligence that sort of draws up those various kind of topics that you may get. So let me just show you a very quick example of that. And that's, you get something that's called Topic Center within your SharePoint environment once you do enable Viva Topics. So in this case, this is not something that I created. It's the system that goes and runs constantly and generates the variety of suggested topics. And they could be any keywords, which allows a user to, if it's a new user especially, to be able to learn what some of the acronyms mean or what some of the keywords are. So you got things like sunflower, Contoso Digital Initiative. I've picked one called Regional Headquarters. So this is kind of a typical topic page you get. So it's just a regular SharePoint page you get, but it's got all the information that's generated for you, and you can pick and choose your own to connect people, with that expertise that they may have, so that you get that richness of your knowledge that exists in your organization. So I've got a variety of files in here that's been suggested. I can add my own, and you can see all the parts of files are not just dedicated to one SharePoint site. This could be from multiple SharePoint sites. So it gives you that nice interface to be able to give information about that topic for regional headquarters optimization, but also even suggestions of SharePoint sites and various things. And you can edit that to your heart's content to make sure that that knowledge is up to date and being able to then search. So the point on this one is that, whatever you do in here and the Yammer topics, the topics in the Yammer that we had a quick look for the Contoso, that's all going to come into, this Viva topic experiences. So, that's again, in public preview, or it should be in public preview sometime this month. Last I checked on the roadmap, that's what's happening. But then also, got various other things in there as well. So, you got your Yammer activity included in various kind of automatic renewals similar to your Microsoft 365 groups, as well as the community app in Teams notification. So these are some of the items. Do take a look at on that link. There's a lot of information around Viva Topics itself in terms of some of the key features that's going to land hopefully early this, a bit later, or if not now. I think that's pretty much what I wanted to cover off from an integration experiences perspective. I think my time is up. So I want to say a big thanks to the organizers, to yourselves, the attendees, and Sarah, of course, for moderating this session. As I love speaking, so I'm speaking at few events, including the user group that I organize. But hope to see many of you in person, mainly in the UK Scottish Summit and Comsverse as well. So do reach out to me, techchirag.com, or techchirag is my handle there. But otherwise, I just want to say a big thanks to everyone, and do rate the feedback, good, bad, ugly, whatever it is. I'd rather take constructive feedback, and then if it's good, then it's great. But otherwise, do enjoy your day and hang around for the closing keynote as well as the after party as well. So hope to catch you then as well. So yeah, over to you, Sarah.